This video will show you how to trace or map coaxial cable with using just a multimeter. When I first moved into my house, I had about 12 coaxial cables that were unmapped, and I needed to be able to trace them and not buy an expensive tool to do it. So first, I'm going to show you how to trace them using tinfoil and a multimeter, and then after the fact, I'll explain how it actually works. And understanding how it works will help you troubleshoot if you have issues. So like I said, all you're going to need is a multimeter, which I already had, a piece of aluminum foil, and a coaxial cable that has connectors on both ends. I had this cheap little coaxial cable that I've used to hook up my TV for years, and this is the one that I used. So your multimeter will need to be able to check continuity, which is the diode symbol with the little speaker next to it. Pretty much even the cheapest multimeters can test continuity. So the first thing you'll do is check your multimeter, turn it on the continuity setting, and touch the electrodes together to make sure that it emits an audible tone when you do that, and that it gives a reading. The next thing you'll do is make a small ball out of tinfoil. Now you'll take the ball of tinfoil, you'll stick it into the connector on the coaxial cable, make sure that it's touching the side of the connector and the very center. So now you have a coaxial cable with the tinfoil ball on one side and a plain connector on the other side. So this is a coaxial connection in my living room, and I wanted to be able to map it so I can know which coaxial cable in my basement will feed to this connection point in my living room. So now I'm going to take my coaxial cable with my tinfoil on one side, and I'm going to use the other side, and I'm going to plug it into the coaxial plate in my living room. You can just set the other side with the tinfoil on the ground. Just make sure the tinfoil ball is still sitting where it needs to be. So now I'm back in my basement, and I'm going to test each coaxial cable to see which one is the one that goes to my living room. So I've got my multimeter set on the continuity setting, and now I'm going to take the leads, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one lead on the inner conductor, the little copper wire in the very middle, and I'm going to put the other lead, and I'm going to touch just the outer metal connector on the coaxial cable. So I would test each coaxial cable, and what I'm looking for is the one that gives me my audible tone, or that gives me a reading on my multimeter. So that will let me know that that's the coaxial cable that leads up to the coaxial connection in my living room. And the first cable I tested gave me no reading. So here's a close-up of what I'm trying to do. I have one lead touching the outer metal connector, and the other lead touching the inner conductor, which is the little pin inside. And so this one gives me the tone, so I know that this is the correct one. Now that I know it goes to my living room, I'm going to label this cable as living room. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back upstairs, and I'm going to take the same coaxial cable with the tinfoil in it, and I'm going to go around my house, and I'm going to plug it into different coaxial connectors. I'm going to come back down, I'm going to test each coaxial cable until it gives me a tone, and that way I'll know that that's the one that feeds to the connector upstairs where I have my coaxial cable connected. And I bought these little label tags off of Amazon, and that's what I've used to label all of my cables downstairs. So if this trick is not working right, here's one thing you can check. Whatever coaxial plate that you're checking, go ahead and unscrew it from the wall, and make sure that the coaxial cable that's coming through the wall is actually connected to the back of the plate. I had one area in my house where this was the case. It wasn't actually connected, and so I was testing all the coaxial cables downstairs, and I could never get a reading until finally I figured out what was going on. So now we can talk about how this trick actually works. So what we're doing is just testing for continuity, and that's just testing the resistance between 2 points. So low resistance means that 2 points are connected, and that causes a tone to be emitted by your multimeter. So when your multimeter is on continuity mode and you press the leads together, that's why it gives you the tone, because there's no resistance between the 2 points when they're connected. And so to understand how we're going to make a circuit, you need to understand how a coaxial cable is built. And so what you have is an outer PVC jacket. You have the outer conductor, which is a braided mesh shield, which inside of that you have the insulation, which is a foil shield with dielectric. And then in the very center you have the center conductor that's usually made of copper. You've also got the metal connectors that are on both ends. And these connectors are typically touching the outer conductor, braided mesh, or shield, whatever you want to call it. And then the inner conductor is shielded from the outer by the dielectric and foil. So what we're doing with the tinfoil is we're actually making a bridge from the inner conductor to the outer conductor by jamming it in between the inner conductor and the metal connector. So this is actually going to make one half of my circuit. The other half of the circuit is going to be completed when I go down to my basement. I take my test leads and my multimeter, and I touch it on the outer metal connector and the inner conductor of the coaxial cable that's the correct one, and that's going to close that circuit and give me the audible tone. That's going to let me know which one is connected to the coaxial cable with the tinfoil that's upstairs. So comment below, let me know what you think, and let me know if you have any other easy tricks to be able to map your coaxial cable. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Thanks for watching.